Welcome back to the Social Seller Podcast with Connor Paulson, where we interview the world's highest quality communicators, professionals, business owners, creatives, and everything in between. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're a high quality communicator, there's a good chance you're living a lot happier life, but you're also bringing those opportunities into your life almost like a magnet. My guarantee is that on this show, we only interview people that I, one, look up to, and two, that I know are going to continue to kill the game for years to come, and I want to make sure they're on your radar. But what I've learned is by asking the best questions, we get the best responses, and that's what the highest quality communicators, our social sellers, are all about. Let's hop inside to the Social Seller. Back to the Social Seller Podcast. I am beyond excited. We're going to hop right in. We have Oswaldo Cepeda here, not only a good friend from the Midwest, grew up in a fellow small town, Midwestern town, and is one of the fastest growing, well-known photographers in the country, and I know that's going to be even beyond here soon. Now, you've done a lot. You're a personal trainer. You've put the work in. You come from playing a lot of video games as a kid like me, and that'll come full circle when we talk about Web 3.0 and how that's coming around. Oswaldo, thank you for being here. What brought you to San Diego, and it sounds like you're moving to LA here soon?
Oh, it's a pleasure being here. But yeah, what brought me to San Diego and California in general is kind of like how you mentioned, I come from a small town. So I come from like a Midwestern town. You guys don't know the Midwest. The Midwest is just like very sprawled out. There's like a few big cities here and there. You have Chicago, which is like, you wouldn't believe it's in the Midwest. And then you leave Chicago and it's like just farmland. And you're like,
yeah.
What is this place? So I'm in one of those like small towns that isn't by anything, like a small farm town, about 20,000 people. And I lived there my whole life. And growing up in a like small town, you don't really have like big goals because people don't necessarily like leave the small town scene. They kind of just stay there for like their whole life. And I was like, this is not for me. Like, I don't want to do this. So I was a personal trainer for a while. I was like, commuting to work to like the nearest town, which is like 45 minutes away.
How old were you?
That was from when I was 18 to 20. I was doing personal training. And then, so like fresh out of high school, went to personal training. And then after that, when I was 20 was when COVID hit. And then that's when I was like, okay, like I can't get back into personal training because there's no way I'm going to be able to actually find work for like the next minimum a year because people are going to be too scared to leave their house. So I was like, let me see what I can actually like do that I'm passionate about that will bring me money and will allow me to kind of like leave Watertown, which is the town that I'm from. And at the time was when like TikTok was really starting to blow up because during COVID, everyone was staying inside. Everyone was, your usage of social media was just like skyrocketing. And TikTok was one of those platforms that was like, everyone was like, oh, this is the new Instagram, you can get viral overnight. And I was like, oh yeah, let me try that. So I downloaded TikTok and like I saw that photography was like actually becoming a thing because at first I was like, oh, TikTok, that's like Musical.ly, that's like dancing, lip syncing and stuff. Yeah. And I'm sure like everyone thought that at first, but like the more I started using the app, the more I was like, oh, like there's like actual other niches on here. It's not just, kids lip syncing. A lot of it was kids lip syncing, but yeah. But there was like other stuff to be made with it. So I was like, oh, let me just try and, dabble with that. And I met some friends and then I was like, given an opportunity to move out here. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take it and see what happens. If I fail, I can just always move back.
Is that what you thought in that moment? Because that's a big part of it, right? Because to get out of the small town is like you almost have to think, what is worst case scenario? And then that's what enables us to do it. Like, oh, I come back.
Yeah, because in my thinking, it's like, oh, the world's on pause right now. So like if I get left behind, it's like, it's my fault. If it was like normal and I like moved out of here like during the middle of like just a normal economy, I would have definitely gotten left behind because it's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But because everything was like just slowed down almost to a pause, I was like, I can come out here and like afford to like not be as good as like I initially want to be because the world isn't moving anywhere anytime soon. So I was like, okay, let me just go out and just feel it out and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, I can always just move back. So worst case scenario was like, oh, I like lost a year of my life. I can just move back. But when I got out here and like I saw the culture and I saw the drive that everyone has and how much more creative people are out here, I was like, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So when I got out here, the reason I went to San Diego instead of LA was one, the place that I found to live in was in San Diego. So I was like, okay, don't really have an option. But two, it was also San Diego was a lot more open during COVID than LA was. LA was like shut down. Like you could not do anything. Like studios were shut down, places to eat were shut down. You had to go everywhere. You had to wear a mask. You couldn't do like more than like 5 people or something like that.
Well, they were always in San Diego.
Yeah, so I was like, damn, like I don't want to do that for a full year because I'm not going to get anywhere. As a new photographer, I need to be putting out work. I need to be getting my toes in the door or my toes in the water, my foot through the door, and like actually getting content to like show that what I can do is worthy of of being like, social media famous and whatnot. So I went to San Diego because I knew that it'd be a lot more open, and obviously it was. After like the first few months, it was basically like back to normal. So then in San Diego, another thing that I liked is just like the pace of it was like a little bit slower, which is good if you're beginning, because if you're in LA and like you're coming from nowhere, it's like everything's like that.
Yeah.
It's like New York, LA, and then it's like that's like the two really fast-paced cities. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not ready to go from like a small town to the second fastest-paced city in the U.S. like overnight. So I was like, okay, San Diego's like a middle ground. Like it's still big. It's close enough to LA that if I need to go up there, I can. But it's also like I'm not in LA, so it's not like as much pressure to like be great, be like as best as you can right now, or you're gonna starve. So that's why I chose San Diego over LA. But now that things are starting to pick up, and now that life's I'm in a lot better position than I was a year ago. I just signed a lease, or I'm about to sign a lease for my apartment in LA, like right downtown LA, where it's really hectic and super, you got to get going. But I'm at that point where like next year I'm like going full balls to the wall. Like I'm already at a good point. I want to double where I'm at by next year. So
that's why you're on the social seller.
And that's why I'm here.
Of the social
that's
seller
why I'm here.
We need to make sure Oswaldo is on everyone's radar, right? And I know you're on a lot of people's, but nowhere close to the masses. Like we were talking, a little bit about YouTube, TikTok. And if you don't know Oswaldo yet, you can look him up on any platform, from YouTube, TikTok, Insta, and you're going to see incredible work. I'm fortunate in the Uptown team to work with a handful of creatives. You, Oscar, and a handful of other friends do work that is authentic, it's unique, and it stands out. And so I know in the intro of this, Oscar and I will make sure we have some of your work phase in the intro. I also love that you explain, and I have to fully align with almost everything you said, with coming from the Midwest. To me, San Diego, because it was a little slower pace, was an easier transition. No joke, I was intimidated by the move out here. You too, like, wow, that's a lot different.
It's a big
than
difference,
out, and
huge
people
difference.
Nice, like, the things that I've seen on the news out here, like, is that true? And anyway, you just do it, and I love hearing that you enjoy it too. And being a creative, I think it does make sense, right? To be
you have to be
in the know,
you have to be in
to
LA.
be in those circles.
Yeah.
What you briefly touched on it. What is the why behind this for you with the photography and creating your brand and building your brand in a way that aligns as an influencer? Yet you're the photographer working with the
right. Yeah. So I'm in a unique position where I do the content creation and I do like the work behind the camera, but I'm also big enough that I'm like an influencer myself at this point. I went from like no following whatsoever last year to like I have over 150K on TikTok. I have 80K on Instagram, 20K on Twitter, approaching 10K on YouTube within a year span. So it's like, to me, I'm still like, oh, I'm a nobody, but like people look up to me now, which is like crazy to think about, because last year that was me. I was the one looking up to these photographers. I was the one looking up to these people. I was like, oh, I want to be them one day. And now that I'm in that position, I'm like, damn, this is crazy. Like I actually have to, be responsible with what I do on the internet, digital footprint and stuff like that. But I feel like I'm in a unique position because I have like a talent that not a lot of people have. And to be an influencer, you really are just like a walk-in billboard for these companies and these ads. And you're what these companies and what these ads want you to be. You're either you're showing off a product, or you're driving traffic to a company. You're not really creating anything or like putting anything of value out there. You're just kind of like a billboard for these companies. And that's how a lot of like TikTokers and a lot of these like influencers make money, which is like, more power to you. If you can just be like making $20,000 a month from showing products, go for it.
And as pissed as you want to be, like they've put in the work almost always and no one sees that, and how annoying it actually gets to be in it for that long. Like it's not sustainable in my eyes when I dabbled around with it.
It's so hard.
And now this is a whole nother level.
Yeah, people always say that like, oh, influencers don't do anything. You would be surprised at like how much they do behind the scenes, because they don't show you everything.
Exactly.
And like I've met plenty of like really high end like influencers, like high listed influencers. They're just like swamped with work 24/7, and it's like, it's very mentally draining. It's like it's like a lot more mentally draining than people will make it out to be, because they have to deal with like hate comments. They have to deal with like all this stuff. They can't use the internet without like getting trashed on, which is like, you're like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But like every day, day in and day out, like that starts taking toll on you, and you just have to like kind of back away from the internet, and which is like kind of sucks, because like that's what made you where you are. So it's like a really weird paradox where like you get to the point where you want to be, but in order to be there, you have to like deal with all of like the worst of the worst on the internet, and it just makes it just not a pleasant thing for you anymore. And you're just like, well, this is my job now, so like I have to do it.
Yeah.
And like luckily I'm not in that position because like a lot of people like my work, so it's like I said, I'm in that weird position where like I create value that's more than just like ads and this. And like I've had companies reach out to me like, oh, we'll pay you to promote this. I'm like, I'm not in the point where like I'm okay doing that because like I still have like a newfound following, so I'm like I want to keep it as genuine as possible. And
it's almost like a disservice in a way.
Yeah, and I'm just like
already trying to make
I don't want to be like another ad for them because then they're like, oh, he's just like another one of those. It's like I'm gonna find a way to get my bag that doesn't require doing this because I don't want to be an influencer. I just want to have influence, and I think there's a big difference with that.
I love that.
There's a huge difference with that because if you're an influencer, you know you're walking billboard. But if you have influence, you can have your following support you instead of the company that is supporting you. So like, for example, if I'm creating a brand and not a company, for my brand, if I wanted to branch out and do clothing, I think my following would understand what the clothing would look like. You know, it'd be more edgy, more moody, darker colors and stuff like that because it aligns with my photography. If I wanted to do music or something like that, same thing. It would be darker, more on the moody side of things. And because it's my own brand, they'd be more willing to support that. And then because it's my own brand, more of that money would go directly to me versus a company coming like, hey, can you support our company and we'll give you like a kickback of it. And then my following may or may not like it because it's like not my authentic brand versus like a company, they do like one thing and they do one thing really well. I don't necessarily want that. I want to create a brand where I can kind of dabble in whatever I want and people will have a sense of what that is before they even go to it because they already know my style so deeply.
I love it. And let's unpack a couple of the gold nuggets in there.
Yeah.
Number one, having influence. I used to be under the belief that having influence was like a bad thing because of our age in influencers and not getting too close to them. And then where we grew up, there weren't really influencers. So it's like there's almost a little like, I don't know how to say it in a subtle way, but like some of the friends from back home are more likely to throw rocks in the virtual sense, or like, you know, not be supportive of someone that might have gone from their school that has done some cool things. And it's not their fault, it's just that's the lens and the life and the environment they've been in. But influence is a good thing, and when you're using it for good, right? And when you have enough influence, you hit this fork in the road, and you decide and you determine, and it comes out of your values and the quality of human you are, am I gonna use it for good or bad? The list of bad influential leaders, and I'm talking on a global scale.
It's a lot.
I'm talking, yeah, and we're not even going to name them. Unfortunately, the bad names usually will trump how many good people are out there, because when you see the good at a certain level, that's where you have a lot of the anonymous donors, I'm realizing. It's a lot of, I don't want the attachment, because it almost does more personal growth for me, right? I'm helping in a genuine way. I don't want the attention. I don't need my name on the University of Iowa's cafeteria, right? Now, does that sound cool? Absolutely. Does that help maybe establish family legacy? Yeah, so I see all the in-betweens, but I love this, and the point here is influence is a good thing, and it's how we use it. Second gold nugget, if we are building personal brands and influence around ourselves and being authentic, something I'm always striving to do more and more, like yourself, like Oscar, you could start a business and it could fail.
100%.
But your personal brand and supporters are there to support you and whatever else you do. Do you see the power in that? And I didn't know that early on. It's exciting. And I realize I have to come from an authentic place, and people have to see the real me, which I'm working on, of like, you know, like you would say, there's a lot of not pretty things in our day-to-day life that aren't Instagram worthy. It's the back end work. It's when you haven't seen friends for a couple of months because you're working. But I love this. Now, before we move on, I get really excited about personal brands, and I would love to be able to build one like Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan has built an authentic brand and everything around it, but he can say whatever he wants authentically, and does he get the hate like anyone else would? Like, think about all the celebrities that could make a single tweet and mess up, right? Or they could have done something and someone's pointing fingers at them. Joe Rogan can do it, but he's like the alpha state, not only I'm imagining in person, haven't met him yet, but he's that same way in all of his content.
Oh, 100%.
Right? And he doesn't stand down, and he has that credibility too, being around all these fighters, and you know, they come on the show, they have respect for him. It's kind of like a Wes Watson, it's kind of like a Navy SEAL. How do you think that kind of personal brand can be created? Is that possible today?
I think it is. I think you just have to really be authentic, because people love getting famous off of a version of themselves that they aren't. Like, you see it all the time where like someone gets really famous and then like they have like a breakdown and then they like release a video. They're like, sorry, I haven't been myself in the last 2 years. Like, I got caught up in it. It's like, why would you let yourself do that? Because then at that point, it's like, if it starts to feel like a job, if you have to like go into like a persona in order to be like relatable with like your following, you should already be relatable. And that's why you should have a following, is because these people relate to you on a personal level. I feel like people relate to me and my content because it comes from like my work is very like more like emotionally driven. And I feel like a lot of people just like are bad at expressing their emotions, but when they see photos like mine, they're like, oh, like I can kind of relate to how this photo feels. And then, you know, they make a connection with it, and then that's why they decide to follow me. Versus like people that like do like, you know, dances and stuff on TikTok, like, oh, they're entertaining, but it's like temporary, like a temporary attachment. And then like, you know, they go on and do something else, and it's like, oh, they're just like ghost followers. Like they found you because like one viral video, and it's like, okay, now they're just there because they don't like, want to unfollow you. If you build like a solid connection with your following, I feel like you can create whatever authentic brand you want to, because those people, they don't care about your content, they care about you. And I feel like that's something that's a big difference in the social media world is, do your followers care about your content, or do they care about you? And when I first started, I wanted people just to care about my content. I was like, I didn't show my face on like any of my platforms for like the first 6 months, because I was like, I don't want people to know who I am. I wanted to have this like online alias of like this mystery person that no one knows. And then I kind of realized that like, oh, like the more I show myself, the more like support I get. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Like I always saw that like, oh, if I showed my face, people would like be like, oh, this guy. Oh.
Do you know what you did different? You humanized it.
Yeah,
you did
exactly.
The exact same thing on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
People overthink and overlook how important a quality profile picture is on LinkedIn, where you're smiling, looking directly into the lens. Right?
Yeah.
Why? Because it's a professional environment. Now, there's, I don't know, hundreds of millions of LinkedIn accounts, as far as I understand, and the only thing that separates you from someone else is that picture, right? Or the visual. So the same exact experience in seeing your work, it is absolutely moody and it's absolutely emotional.
Yeah.
And there's light and there's color, there's dimension. And this is coming from someone that's not a photographer, someone that just values it. And looking at NFTs and things, I value authenticity, anything that's novel, right? And you mentioned before we started, you had a quick business call, but right before that call, you mentioned you had sold some NFTs.
Yeah.
What is your take on Web 3.0?
I think long game plan, it's great. It's going to be, it's obviously the next evolution in both social media, both just internet in general. I think right now, as it is, I think we're still in that weird in-between phase where some people are trying to exploit it and trying to like use it as like, oh, this is the next step, and then just like doing cash grabs and then like run in. Like, there's tons of like 10K projects. It's like the number one driving factor for NFTs for like the past few months. And 10K projects, for those of you who don't know, it's just, they're like digital assets that are randomized, and it's like a figure, and then there's like traits, and each trait has a different rarity, and there's usually like 10,000 of them, and you mint them, which is like you put in like a ticket essentially, and then you get one spit out, and then the next day it like unveils, and then you get to see if you got like a rare one or like a common one, and then from there you can like sell it. And it's kind of like stocks basically, but the thing is like these are really easy to make. And a lot of people figured that out, and they're like, oh, let me make my own. Let me get some money, and then let me put no value back into the Web 3.0 ecosystem. So these people are making these like 10K projects, and then they're like hyping it up. They're like creating this false, sense of, oh, we're going to push the boundaries. We're going to do this. It drops. People buy in. They get a bunch of money, and they just like desert the project. And then it's just like, I don't think that's the way
Absolutely not.
Web 3.0 should be, because it's like putting really bad taste in a lot of people. Because like say that's like your first chance at using Web 3.0. It's like, oh, I'm going to be using the blockchain to get this avatar, and then you do that, and then you just wasted all your money. You're going to be like, oh, fuck Web 3.0, fuck NFTs. You're not going to be into it. And another thing is like, there's like a gatekeeping culture kind of in NFTs right now, where like celebrities are trying to buy in because obviously they have the money to do so, which is great. That means money's going into the NFT world, and NFTs are just like a small part of it, but that's like the most prominent part of it right now. So like celebrities and stuff are like trying to buy NFTs from people, and like on Twitter it's a big thing to like expose what celebrities in your DM. It's like that's not really the move, because like you want to have these big people of influence, because if you show that they're into NFTs, and people that follow them, like we mentioned earlier, like devoted followers of them are gonna be like, oh, what's an NFT? Let me go research it. Let me go get into it. Exactly, because they have real influence. And I know right now it's like, there's some pretty big names in it. There's like Odell Beckham, there's Jay-Z, there's
big ones. Snoop Dogg, Des Bryant, Gary Vee are like some of the OG names. Now there's other names under that, and Tom Bilyeu I would say added to that picture with the impact theory. Like some of the business names are coming into the space.
Visa bought bought a punk.
Nike just announced a secret project behind the scenes. Facebook
There's like a
turned to
bunch.
Meta.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of companies that they may not be so like pushing forward like public with it, but like if you look at the patents and stuff, like they're working behind the scenes.
And that's what a lot of the world doesn't see.
And yeah, and if you get in now, when they finally reveal it and like everything jumps up, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got into it." Like when I did, even if it's like a month ago, you know, because like Ethereum, like around June, it was like 1,800. I think it like dropped, and everyone was like, "Oh, NFTs are dead." And then if you bought in at 1,800, like right now it's 4,500. So it's like even like in 3 months. Like that's a crazy amount of change, and that's without any of these like big like investment firms or these big companies getting into it yet. So once all these big companies and these big like driving forces get into Web 3.0, Ethereum's going to skyrocket. All these crypto assets are going to skyrocket because everyone's going to be like trying to buy it up before it skyrockets, and that's going to drive it forward. And I feel like eventually companies like Facebook, Meta, they're the ones that are going to be revolutionary, like revolutionizing the way we use Web 3.0 because they have the tools, they have the resources, they have the assets to make whatever they want. You know, Mark Zuckerberg, as much as everyone hates him because he's like trying to create a monopoly.
Such a smart move.
In Web 3.0, like right now, the only driving force is profit. And like I mentioned with the 10K projects, everyone's only doing it for profit. No one's trying to use the technology to make something new. Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire. He doesn't give a fuck about profit. He's there to revolutionize the way that we use Web 3.0 and then profit. So he's got to reverse. He's got the resources, he's got the assets, he's got all the funding in the world. He's going to use the technology to change the way that we can actually use Web 3.0, and then that's going to change the entire scene altogether. And I think 10K projects are going to be a thing of the past in 4 or 5 years from now, after all these big companies come in and show new ways that we can use it, because then people are going to actually want to invest in these cool new ways of using the blockchain, not just us like Avatar. And I think that, there's still going to be the staple ones like Bored Ape Yacht Club, Punks, Cats, all those like Squiggles, like those like
the
first.
Novel.
Yeah.
They were the first to do it.
Exactly. They were like the first to do it. So they're like, okay, there's still like value in those because it's like owning a piece of history. It's like, oh, you owned like one of the original NFT projects. Like that's actually worth
something. The beauty of the blockchain is that it's all tracked. Like
exactly.
That's what I didn't get for a long time. The real power of NFTs are in the smart contracts and then the utility. Yeah. And that's the difference, right? I've supported a lot of creatives with their artwork because I want to own one of their first because I know that over the next 5 to 10 years, that's a long-term hold. Yeah. Now, there is definitely money-making opportunities, and I think on the flip side is some of the utility. And for anyone that is hungry for it, I highly recommend looking into Tom Bilyeu's project. Simply because I've never seen a project appeal to business owners, and this is the only way to partner, the right to partner with Impact Theory, with anyone in his network. So 5 to 10 years down the road, and there's only 2,700 of those. They were all minted, bought up right away, right? My vision is I know that Coca-Cola is going to be coming into the space. I know that the big Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50s are going to come into the space. The big whales will come into the space over the next year and 2 years and revolutionize, absolutely. But they're going to come in with money where they want the things. And when they want something exclusive, they just want it, right? So I love that you're saying the novel of these. I mentioned the functionality because it is not simply just the image, and it could be a moving graphic, right? When I say utility, it means you're getting in and you're a part of a community. And that is how I value, number one, the investments that I'm getting into in the NFT realm. I got into the first one in May and just seeing kind of the progression. A lot of it is just bird's eye view, watching how everything's coming around. Okay, this is popping off. I think gaming's going to definitely take over for 2022. Yeah, that'll be where we see NFTs just take over. Now it's going to be fun when we see AAA plus games start coming out. And all of a sudden, I think earlier in the week, the Snake equivalent in the NFT world I don't know if it's on Polygon or like what platform, but the equivalent of Snake is like Snake on a BlackBerry or whatever original phone is currently like one of the highest market caps. Like it's in the top 10 for gaming or something. I was watching it earlier in the week, and it's like, I just know it's going to go well beyond that. But that's how excited people are getting into that because they want to be a part of a first functional product.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get it. It's what do you value?
Yeah. So I think I really value the utility aspect of it as much as like I want to hold a cool asset and be like, oh, I was the first one to do it. I also want to have something that like has utility. So like a good example would be like with Bored Ape Yacht Club, what they're trying to do and the way that they're building their community is they're trying to have like these cool in real life events where you can only get in if you're a Bored Ape Yacht Club member. And there's like a bunch of, you know, high list people. So it's like, oh, I can get into the same party as like Jay-Z if I wanted to, which I feel like is like a lot bigger of a flex than people think it is. Like people are like, oh, you just bought like a stupid cartoon. It's like, dude, well, this cartoon lets me get within 10 feet of Jay-Z. So can you do that? No. So I think that's a good utility.
It's the right to partner that they can use that NFT. Like there's so many ways, right? That Bored Ape now, you're seeing it. You're going to start seeing them on commercials that we'll see in the Super Bowl. Quote that. I bet we see something
100%. Dude, there's
like
some
Bored
rich
Apes
people
in the Super Bowl.
There are some rich people in
NYC NFT going on. Anyway.
And with Bored Apes, the other thing is when you buy a Bored Ape, you're also buying the like copyright of it, so you can lease that out to like.
They make the money when
exactly.
Disney wants to
so then that's another utility. You know, why sell your Bored Ape to Disney when you can be like, hey, I'll just license it to you, and then just make passive income off that. And then when the time comes that you want to sell it, you've already accumulated like enough to like buy a floor one back. So it's like that's what I think is good utility. But a lot of times. Right now, at least in the space, like a lot of the utility is just like, oh, you're part of this community. And it's like, well, do I even want to be part of that community? Because like that community isn't like that stellar yet. You know, the only communities that are like really crazy right now are like the Bored Ape Yacht Club community, because it's like everyone knows a Bored Ape. Even if you're not in an NFT, you've probably seen a Bored Ape.
Yeah.
And then these like new communities are trying to like replicate that. And so you can't replicate something that like came up naturally. You know, you can't force community. It has to just happen. Yeah. And I feel like that's a lot of what 10K projects don't understand. But a really good utility I've seen on one of the projects that I like recently got my eyes on, I think it's called Meta Hero. And basically it's like these like cameras set up in like a like circular pattern, and they take a picture of you, super high res, or they can scan whatever. It's not just you. They can scan anything into like the metaverse. And then from there you can NFT yourself. So then you can like lease your image to like movie companies to use like CGI, or like video game companies to like put you in like a game and stuff. And I think that's a really good utility, because it's like now you're like really part of the metaverse. You're like, why would I buy an avatar when I can be my own avatar? Why would I, you know, try and do a different image when I can literally just be myself in the metaverse, or I can license my image to somebody, or I can sell my image and stuff like that. And I think that's a really cool way of using Web 3.0. And I think that like companies that do that, or like projects that do stuff like that, where it's like, let's think outside of the box. Let's not just do a 10K project. Let's see what we can actually do to push the space forward. I think those are the companies that are going to be huge 4 or 5 years from now, because all the 10K projects are going to die off. And these companies that are coming in, like actually using the technology to do something new and do something revolutionary, are the ones that are, like people are going to actually know 4 or 5 years from now, because those are going to be the ones that are like driving everything. Kind of like how Apple was the first to like really make smartphones something that people wanted. Before then, you know, everyone was like, they wanted a like physical keyboard. And I remember BlackBerry, like if you go back to like 2007, those like news articles are like, oh, BlackBerry was like clowning on iPhone, because like they were like, oh, people want a physical keyboard, and like they were wrong. And it's like, when they figured it out, they were like, oh, like it's fucking game over. You know, they're already years behind iPhone, and then iPhone just kind of took over. So same thing with this. People are like, oh, people want 10K projects. People want this. Like, I think they only want it because that's what's only available right now.
You know, I agree and I disagree, right?
Oh,
because
really?
the power of 10K is community. In what I'm valuing and what I'm looking at is how many owners are in it, right? Now, if
That's
there's
true.
less than 1,000 in a 10K project, that means
sketchy.
whales,
Yeah.
right? And anyone can pull the rug. But now, if I'm looking at volume, all-time volume in projects, we're looking at projects between 2 and 10,000 Ethereum traded all time, right? Now, most of these projects, if you're looking on 90-day map, whether it's Icy Tools or Nansen or even OpenSea, and Activity, like shows you a lot of this data now. You can start to see where this is kind of going, and go into the ranks. Don't look at maybe the top 100, but start keeping an eye between the top 200 and 300. And there's kind of some magic there when you start looking. But yeah, the volume aspect is a big component. I agree. I don't even click into any project that isn't actively, if there aren't enough owners in the community, simply put.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right, because that's usually a good indicator. And just yesterday, or earlier this week, like on Monday, there was that famous, and it's going to go down as an iconic like meme in the NFT world, I have a feeling, but it's that guy live streaming with whatever
with the
project
game,
that they pulled the rug
squid,
on.
He was like, it was like, oh, market cap $2 trillion. Oh, it's at zero.
And so many people lost a ton of money, and unfortunately that's happening. But
that's altcoins, though. You gotta be careful with altcoins.
Oh yeah, straight up.
You gotta be so careful
this
with
whole
those.
space, right? And when we're talking NFTs, this is just the next progression from crypto, right?
Yeah,
and that's for anyone that might not be in NFTs.
Yeah, they're two different things. Crypto and NFTs are like they're the same and they're not the same.
You need crypto. It's the token. It's the US dollar you have in your pocket.
Yeah.
But now to use it on the digital scene, you use like a MetaMask if you're using Ethereum to now purchase something digital.
Yeah.
That's kind of the next.
And then that's like the NFT. And the NFT is like the asset. Crypto is like the money. The NFT is like the asset. Kind of like a car is the asset, dollar is the money. And then whether it goes up and down is determined by society. Because some cars will never be worth what they are again. 60 years from now, maybe those are like classic cars and then you can resell it for like whatever. Except in the metaverse, it's like 10 times the speed. You'll know if something's worth something or not within like the first 5 months. Because if the activity drops to zero, it's done. You're not getting your money back.
Exactly.
Might as well sell it for like as low as you can and then try and write it off as like a tax write-off, but you're not going to get your money back. And I think one project that really like showed the world how important community and how important like there's like factors that people don't really see is Mechaverse. If you saw that, the mechas.
Did you?
So they were like the most hyped project like ever. Like from the day that they announced to like the day that they launched was I think 2 months, and it went from 0 followers to like 100,000 followers, and then before they even like unveiled, people were selling these for like 6-7 Ethereum, which for people who don't know like the conversion, that's like
25,000.
Yeah, like easy 30,000 right there. And people were just selling these, and like people were buying them up for that much. One of my friends bought one for 8 Ethereum. He's not, no, I know. He's like, oh, I trust it'll go up. Unveiled, it dropped a little bit. We're like, okay, that's gonna happen. And then like all this FUD came out where they're like, oh, this little thing happened, and then people were like, oh, sell off, and now it's like barely 1 Ethereum. So
I think it'll come back.
I think
I was close to getting in, and
I was like feeling it. I was like. I was like, this is too good to be true, but it's also like, if I'm wrong, then I just like fumble the bag.
Is Metaverse the AAA game that kind of looks like Transformers, or am I getting that mixed up with?
Mechas looked like Transformers.
Yeah, like it's a AAA plus game, so that's why it got right.
Well, I don't think
one of the
they wanted to like
of.
One of their roadmaps is to make a game eventually, but like from like in the beginning, it's just like the avatars and whatnot, because they need the funding to do that, which is another thing that I really like about crypto is. I think the biggest thing that NFTs can do for people, especially like musicians and stuff, is you can now just crowdfund your own career instead of needing an advance from like a label. So one of like the models that I've seen is instead of going to a label, pitching yourself, they give you money, you have to pay that money back, right? That's how like the music industry works. Instead of doing that, an artist can build up like social media following, build up influence, and then be like, hey, I'm making an NFT for like my first album. Anyone who buys it can get free admission to like my concert. You can get exclusive merch, can become of this, this community around my first album. And then all the money goes to funding the rest of his career off that first album instead of needing to go to a label and pitching that. And then he owns all his royalties. He owns, his own music. He owns everything about his music career. And he doesn't need these labels to give him money to do so. His fans and his true followers can actually do so. And then you're also getting utility of it because you're like, oh, like imagine you were like the first person to buy, I don't know, Kanye West's first album as like an NFT. 20 years later, now that Kanye is like one of the most influential people in music, like period. Fashion, fashion, music, like anything he touches, it's like the Kanye effect. Like he's got influence. If you owned his like first album NFT, like you'd be sitting on like a gold mine because you're like,
or his first pair of Yeezys. Right, in the digital, that also has a physical component. So you get them, but then everyone online knows that you own the original.
Exactly.
Right? So you didn't just spend the 5K or 10K on the original drop to get the first because you support him. This is taking a whole new way with this blockchain thing we're talking about in smart contracts. Still over my head in a lot of ways, and we're going to see this progress, but this is what keeps track of everything.
Oh, 100%.
So you can't, there's no lying. You get rid of it's absolute. Now, right now we're paying for it with crazy gas fees.
Those
will, it sounds like, go down in the next year.
Well, Ethereum 2.0 is supposed to fix that. Supposed to.
We'll see how fast that comes out before Solana and some of these others
Oh, I know.
compete.
Solana's kind of going up right now. I think Solana's gone up like 40% in the week.
If you're listening to this in the first, well, I guess this will come out in early next week, but Solana's a good place to be in right now.
Solana, I got
for anything to keep
got a bag in
liquid,
Solana.
and that's like pretty confident. No financial advice. Again, we are
It's
just
never
friends that
financial
are
advice.
interested in this. A couple of the other projects that we've kept our eye on, like, you're gonna get that because you would not expect anything else, and you have that confidence and conviction.
Right.
What I've learned in life is that comes from somewhere.
It does.
So let's talk about what was, when I say lowest point, like what immediately comes to mind?